Patterns of Inheritance by Courtney Ralph. What is Mendelian patterns of inheritance? The person on the right, Gregor Mendel, created patterns of inheritance. Mendelian inheritance is when genes are passed along from generation to generation according to these simple rules of probability. The first rule is complete dominance. The phenotypic effect of the dominant allele is displayed over the effect of the recessive one. Law of segregation. When gametes are formed, the allele pairs separate into one allele per egg and sperm, or one allele for each gene. Finally, the last law is law of independent assortment. The inheritance of one trait has no effect on the independent allele assortment of another. You can find these 3 rules of probability in my next slide, using a practice problem of Mendelian patterns of inheritance of a dragon. Mendelian inheritance problem. In dragons, wings are a dominant trait, but some dragons are born wingless. So the dominant trait would then be the wings, which is FF heterozygous and FF homozygous dominant. The wingless would then be the recessive trait. I would write FF homozygous recessive. The next part of the problem asks, if a wingless dragon is crossed with one that is heterozygous, how many of its offspring will be wingless? So I labeled the wingless and I labeled the heterozygous. Now I'm going to be using a monohybrid cross to show the results. This is where I take the wingless dragon genotype FF and the heterozygous genotype FF, uppercase and lowercase. Now I'm ready to start crossing. First we have one heterozygous, another heterozygous, a recessive, and another recessive. So how many of its offspring will be wingless? To do this, I'm going to write the genotype and phenotype ratios to figure out the answer to this question. It asks how many of the offspring will be wingless, so it's looking for 2 recessive FFs. You can see that there are 2 out of 4, or 1/2, or 50% of the F heterozygous, uppercase, lowercase. But there's also a 1/2% of the recessive FF. So what does this mean? Using the phenotype ratio, I'm gonna solve that the 50% of the FF heterozygous means that its 50% will be the dominant with wings. But on the other hand, there's 50% lowercase ff, which means there's 0.5% of wingless. So the answer to the question is 1/2 wingless. In the previous slide, we learned about the 3 rules of probability. So in this problem, the rule of complete dominance was shown with the dominant trait. This was shown with the uppercase F in the homozygous dominant and the heterozygous, having complete dominance to have wings. For the law of segregation, each parent has one allele going to each offspring. So one sperm and one egg are segregated to each offspring. And for the law of independent assortment, the recessive FF was independently sorted and had no effect on the other offspring created, and this applies to all offspring.